From CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite and Marvin Kalb in Rawalpindi, Pakistan, Tom Fenton in Tel Aviv, Ed Rabel in Miami, Robert Shackney in New York, Richard Roth in St. Louis, Richard Threlkeld in San Francisco, John Lawrence in London, in Washington, Bernard Kalb, Fred Graham, and Hal Walker.
Good evening. The Middle East ceasefire plan was unveiled officially today, and right away, a hitch developed. When Henry Kissinger flew out of Arabia earlier today, he thought he had his diplomatic ducks in a row, and Marvin Kalb reported the optimistic spirit aboard his aircraft winging toward China.
Kissinger in his personal plane at 32,000 feet, hopscotching all week from one Arab capital to another, pulling together his latest successful example of crisis diplomacy, the six-point plan accepted by Israel and Egypt for strengthening the ceasefire along the Suez Canal and advancing the prospect, perhaps before the end of this year, of the first meaningful direct diplomatic contact between Arab and Israeli in the last 25 years. Last night, Kissinger discussed the essence of his plan with King Faisal, trying to persuade the Saudi Arabian leader to open the oil tap once again, now that the U.S. has demonstrated its peaceful intentions in the Middle East. The plan, as revealed to the King, and today to the Shah of Iran, calls first for UN troops to replace Israeli forces at checkpoints along the Cairo-Suez road, to supervise, with Israeli help, the flow of non-military supplies to Suez City and to the trapped Egyptian Third Army. Then, within a few days, if all goes well, to exchange prisoners of war. Israeli troops would not have to pull back to the ceasefire lines of October 22nd unless that pullback was part of a larger disengagement of Israeli and Egyptian troops. Actually, high American officials revealed here tonight that Egypt and Israel have already exchanged disengagement plans. Kissinger understands that this agreement may be violated time and again, but the trend he feels is now positive towards peace talks and not war. Marvin Kalb, CBS News, Rawalpindi.
Tel Aviv late this evening pulled back from immediate full acceptance of the Kissinger plan. Instead, after a long cabinet meeting, it announced agreement in principle and said it was seeking clarification from Washington. Marvin Kalb tells us by phone from Pakistan that the clarifications are mostly of a technical nature, but they're subject to intensive negotiations. The feeling is still that the agreement will be worked out satisfactorily. The Israelis want to know who inspects the trucks first en route to the Egyptian First Army, for instance, and the Third Army, that is, Israel or the United Nations. And Kalb also reports that a controversy over the blockade of the Gulf of Aqaba was not mentioned in the agreement because of Egyptian internal politics, although yesterday it was said that such would be in the formal agreement. Earlier, Tom Fenton filed a report from Tel Aviv on the concern there over some aspects of the Kissinger plan.
Prime Minister Meir was to have made a television address tonight explaining her acceptance of the plan worked out in Cairo by President Sadat and Secretary Kissinger. The speech was canceled and an urgent cabinet meeting was called, reportedly because of last-minute disagreements over the terms of the plan, as announced in Washington, and varyingly interpreted in Cairo and Tel Aviv. The Israelis were concerned about the plan's failure to mention the lifting of the Egyptian Red Sea blockade and about the limited extent of Israeli control over supplies reaching the surrounded Egyptian Third Army. Meanwhile, on the Egyptian front, there was at least one encouraging sign that the ceasefire is becoming less fragile. Israel has always refused, as a matter of principle, to allow a United Nations force on its side of the lines. The arrival of 114 Irish soldiers at the Israeli checkpoint on the Cairo-Suez road marked a reversal of that policy. They were the first contingent of a United Nations emergency force that will eventually number 250. The Irish force is not actually moving into Israel, but into Israeli-occupied Sinai and the west bank of the Suez Canal. These UN soldiers in their Kelly green sweaters will act as a buffer force between the Israelis and the Egyptians. In 1967, UN troops were only on the Egyptian side of the lines. Nasser could therefore unilaterally order their departure, thus clearing the way, ironically, for the Israeli attack. Now the United Nations will be on both sides of the line. Tom Fenton, CBS News, Tel Aviv.
Do you have anything for headaches?
Yeah. Take 2 of these.
Arthritis pain formula. I have a headache, not arthritis.
Doesn't matter. Arthritis pain formula is great for occasional headaches, too. Look at the label.
Also relieves headaches. Must be strong.
You bet it is. APF has more pain reliever in it than most headache tablets. Arthritis pain formula.
Hey, thanks. Arthritis pain formula is great for headaches.
Arthritis pain formula. Great for headaches, too.
If sometime tonight, the sting of occasional heartburn and acid indigestion is at its worst, remember this demonstration. We're simulating the acid-absorbing power of the leading role antacid and Bicidol. Watch how concentrated Bicidol with more active ingredients is absorbing far more acid. Tablet for tablet, 70% more. For quick relief when you need it most, at night. Bicidol, extra power tonight for what your stomach went through today.
While dealing with the routine and ritual of the White House, President Nixon today found time for an unannounced discussion of his Watergate problems with top congressional Republicans, and Bernard Kalb reports.
Both before and after the president accepted the credentials of these foreign ambassadors, he met with top Republican leaders of Congress who discussed, among other things, how to overcome the administration's credibility problem. The participants emerged talking predictably upbeat.
We had a very candid meeting. The president was very communicative. He listened to with great interest to the things that we had to say. I think that one significant aspect of this meeting is that we have established, I think, very good lines of communication between the Republican leadership and the Congress and the president.
He also was absolute and complete in his assurance that he is going to be cooperative with the court and with the special prosecutor in all respects. And I feel a great deal more confidence, I think, as a result of the 2-hour meeting this afternoon.
Congressman Anderson said the session with the president was very frank and freewheeling. He also said that the subject of resignation and the subject of impeachment did not come up. Bernard Kalb, CBS News, the White House.
The president reportedly plans other such meetings to try to reconcile his Watergate problems within his party. And the White House said that he also will take, quote, very constructive and positive steps to clear up the problem of the White House tapes. Specifically, what steps was not said. Federal Judge Sirica, meantime, pursued his own inquiry into the tapes with former Nixon Chief of Staff Bob Haldeman on the witness stand. Fred Graham reports.
Haldeman's appearance before Judge Sirica marked his 3rd testimony about the White House tapes. Earlier, he'd sworn to the Senate Watergate Committee and to a grand jury that he had listened to only 2 of the tapes. But this time, Prosecutor Richard Benvenisti confronted Haldeman with evidence that Haldeman had checked out 31 tapes and had kept some of them at his home overnight. Haldeman said he couldn't remember why he did that, but he said he listened to only 2 conversations because he had not participated in the others. When the prosecutor pointed out that Haldeman had participated in 3 of the others, Haldeman replied, "I don't recall." Haldeman denied damage in any tapes, and he left the stand without backing away from his prior sworn testimony. But the former efficiency expert of the Nixon White House had responded to more than 24 questions by saying he didn't remember. White House attorney Fred Bazart testified that President Nixon's personal secretary, Rosemary Woods, was wrong when she said there was a gap in the tapes. Bazart said she merely had her tapes and dates confused. Fred Graham, CBS News, Washington.
A federal judge in Washington has agreed to rule next week on the legality of the firing of Archibald Cox, a special Watergate prosecutor. The judge acted in a suit challenging the authority of Solicitor General Robert Bork to discharge Cox after the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General had resigned rather than do so. The suit was filed by consumer advocate Ralph Nader, Senator Frank Moss, and Representatives Bella Abzug and Jerome Walde.
My goodness, sounds like you folks sure lead a busy life.
Well, living in the city does get hectic, Mama. Sometimes I have trouble falling asleep.
Well, everyone does once in a while.
Oh, I know. Don't you think I remember you telling Dad, John, take Sominex. So that's what I do. I take Sominex, and it helps me relax and feel drowsy so I can get to sleep.
With a lot less trouble, right?
With a lot less trouble, Mama.
Sominex. It helps take the trouble out of falling asleep.
Now there's Fixodent, a plastic cream discovery that has revolutionized denture holding to help keep dentures tight when you bite. Fixodent flows evenly, smoothly, filling gaps and forming a strong, resilient seal in your mouth that even stands up to pressure when you bite hard. Feel more secure, more comfortable with Fixodent. It helps keep dentures tight when you bite. Fixodent.
Before resuming the tape's inquiry, Judge Sirica imposed relatively light sentences on Howard Hunt, the cloak and dagger man of the Watergate burglary, James McCord, who broke the code of silence on the operation, and 4 functionaries. Hal Walker reports.
Judge John Sirica, who delayed final sentencing for more than 7 months, ordered jail terms for all of the 6 remaining Watergate defendants. The stiffest sentence went to E. Howard Hunt, the former CIA agent who helped plan the Watergate break-in. 2.5 to 8 years in jail and a $10,000 fine. James McCord, whose revelations to Judge Sirica broke open the Watergate case, 1 to 5 years, no fine. The so-called Miami Four, Virgilio Gonzalez, Eugenio Martinez, Bernard Barker, and Frank Sturgis, pleaded through their attorney for leniency. Judge Sirica listened to the pleadings, then gave 3 of the defendants 1 to 5 years. Barker was handed a minimum of 18 months, a maximum of 6 years. Barker's daughter, Mrs. Maria Elena Moffett, was bitter over the sentencing.
I think my father does not deserve 18 months in jail. He doesn't deserve 18 days in jail. I think that men like Mr. Nixon are the ones that were basically trying to destroy our country. Mr. Nixon is the one that should get 18 months, not my father.
With credit for time served, the other 3 Miami men could be paroled by Christmas. Hunt still faces 1.5 years in jail, and McCord still has ahead of him most of his 12-month sentence if his appeal fails. Those compare to the 6 to 20 years given the unrepentant G. Gordon Liddy, the first of the Watergate 7 to be sentenced. Hal Walker, CBS News, U.S. District Court, Washington.
The so-called Miami Four all came from the Cuban community of that Florida resort city, and all had strong ties to the CIA, which has been a pervasive force in that community. Before today's sentencing, Ed Rabel sampled the impact of Watergate on Miami's Cuban Americans.
The song is in Spanish, and the words call for brotherly love. The children are mostly Cuban American, the sons and daughters of Miami's large Cuban community. One day, they will read history books clarifying how Cubans were involved in Watergate. But for now, as one of their teachers explains, older Cubans are puzzled about the uproar over the incident.
It doesn't scandalize them as much as it does to the general public and the American people. I think that they take for granted that things like that happen in politics here and anywhere in the world.
Many Cubans here take their religion seriously, and their political fervor against communism and Castro is taken seriously too. Although they still harbor a deep desire to go back to a Castro-free Cuba, many have assumed United States citizenship, are established, and own their own businesses. They look to the U.S. government to pave their return to Cuba. But now, many are blaming Cuban involvement in the Watergate break-in on a single federal agency.
You know, to talk about the CIA in Miami right now is like nothing. A few years ago was to be a very important person if you're working for the CIA. Today, to be a member of the CIA here is just like working for the post office.
WQBA is an all-Spanish radio station in Miami. Emilio Millan's telephone call-in program is heard nightly by hundreds of thousands in South Florida and Cuba.
Entonces, en definitiva, ¿confía usted todavía en el presidente Nixon?
El presidente Nixon.
Millan says 75% of his callers this day supported President Nixon because they feel he fights communism. But they were dissatisfied over treatment of the Watergate burglars. He is convinced that Cubans would be reluctant to volunteer for any more Watergate-type projects.
You know the reason. 4 Cubans are in jail. And that 4 men, they believe that they were working, helping the country against the communists, fighting for the freedom of the American people, not only for the Cuban people.
For the wives and families of the men in jail, these have not been happy times. Maria Alonso is the daughter of Virgilio Gonzalez, one of the burglars. As she was preparing lunch for her husband, she thought about her father in jail.
my father's, it's not a crook.
What do you think he might say to someone who would come to him and say, we, for national security purposes, must break into a political headquarters?
Knowing my father, he'd probably say, you're a nut. Just send him away and say, forget it. You got the wrong guy.
Clara Barker, wife of Bernard Barker, packed a bag for the trip to be near her husband when Judge Sirica announced his sentence. She thinks her husband has been treated unfairly.
Segretti only gets 4 months, and not only that, the judge even lets him go home to take care of his business, and he can go serve whenever he wants to. I mean, you know, it looks like what's happening. Is it something against just the Miami men? Why?
Jan Sturgis, wife of Frank Sturgis, planned to stay in Miami this week. She spoke of the loneliness she's felt since her husband was jailed.
The last 10 months, I have lived totally in limbo. There are times that, you know, you say, why, God, why? But there must be a reason. I don't know the reason. I do know that someday my husband will return, and the day that he returns, I will start to live again. Until now, I'm Sleeping Beauty. I'm not alive.
Loneliness, bitterness, sorrow. Each of those words expresses how Cubans feel about what has happened to their men because of Watergate. The consensus is that this community will be on guard against future appeals for recruits for projects in the name of national security or anti-communism. Ed Rabel, CBS News, Miami.
Former United Mine Workers President Tony Boyle emerged from a Washington hospital today for the first time since his apparent suicide attempt almost 2 months ago. He went to federal court, where his lawyer agreed to a hearing in Pittsburgh later this month to answer charges that Boyle ordered the murder of his union rival Joseph Yablonsky. Boyle's doctors say his condition has improved, but that he might possibly again attempt suicide, so he's going to remain in the hospital. In Santa Cruz, California today, Edmund Kemper was sentenced to life in prison for the murders of his mother and 7 other women.
I don't let my family run to the medicine chest every time something bothers them. But if my husband, or one of the big ones, tells me his head hurts and his stomach feels upset, then I go get the Alka-Seltzer. It has specially buffered aspirin with antacids, made for just those things. If he still doesn't feel all right, I'll call the doctor, because nothing else I can give him works better than Alka-Seltzer. The mother has to know these things.
General Electric introduces the Flash Bar 10 Array, the revolutionary flash that lets you take 10 pictures with the same flash bar. The Flash Bar 10 was invented by General Electric for the Polaroid SX70 land camera. With the Flash Bar 10, you have as many flashes as pictures in a film pack. The Flash Bar 10 Array. Another flash of genius from General Electric.
The Dow Jones Industrials declined more than 24 points on the New York Stock Exchange, and that was their 6th largest loss ever and the biggest drop in more than 11 years. Yesterday, the market was up, presumably in reaction to President Nixon's energy message. But by today, many investors apparently have decided the energy crisis will be around for a long time, and that's bad news. Today's volume on the New York Stock Exchange was 17,300,000 shares. The average price per share dropped 59 cents on the New York Exchange, 14 cents on the American. The Senate Interior Committee today continued work on the emergency energy bill that would give President Nixon the broad powers he wants to fight the nation's fuel shortage. Chairman Henry Jackson said the bill could be put to a Senate vote by the middle of next week. A White House spokesman told Jackson's committee it would take about 3 or 4 months for Mr. Nixon's energy conservation program to actually start working. Senator Warren Magnuson said his Commerce Committee is hurrying up legislation that would extend daylight saving time to year-round. Meanwhile, White House Energy Chief John Love had some predictions about possible gas rationing. He told the Associated Press that he feels it could be necessary as early as next spring, regardless of developments in the Middle East. Love said that a U.S. petroleum shortage of 10% would occur even if shipments of Arab oil resumed, and his office said it has no indication of when or whether the shipments would resume. The mere mention of gas rationing strikes fear in most Americans. We're a people who have become increasingly dependent on that fuel. We have reports from 3 regions on how fuel restrictions could affect the American lifestyle. First, Robert Shackney in New York.
Gasoline rationing during World War II was an inconvenience and annoyance, fewer cars in the streets, but it didn't really change the way most city people lived or worked. In 1973, the potential impact of a major oil shortage would be something else indeed, more far-reaching, affecting a whole lifestyle.
Look what the doggy does, Madeline.
For children, the school day might be drastically shortened, winter holiday season vacations extended. There could be doubling up in some classrooms, some schools even closed. Getting to work in a city like New York, uncomfortable enough already in the rush hour, would be more painful with heatless subway cars, fewer subway trains running, no trains at all at some hours. Could people work at all? What if elevator service was cut in half in skyscraper office buildings, or cut off altogether to conserve electric power? The non-essential lights would go out at night. Times Square would be dark, street lighting dim. The modern city is an electric city. Not only the high-rise office building, but also the high-rise apartment house, where elevator service is more than just a luxury. There is no substitute for electric power. The guessing is that if fuel supplies drop by 10 to 15%, the cities won't be able to function the same. Robert Shackney, CBS News, New York.
It is called the Gateway to the West, still a major distribution point to the nation's midsection and beyond. But like many cities, St. Louis is no longer the population center of 50 years ago. Most people don't shop here. Retail sales downtown, about 6% of the total for the metropolitan area. About the only way to get to work is by automobile. No commuter trains or buses to speak of, just cars, lots of them. They come from here, the suburbs, places that were trading villages 100 years ago, half a day's horse ride to the city. Today, they are cities in their own right, tens of thousands of people, and 2 cars or more in just about every driveway. Like most suburbs, if you live here, you drive a car, because the neighborhood school isn't always down the block from home. It's often in someone else's neighborhood. And because the bank isn't on the corner of Main Street, it's at the shopping center, the same place you find the department store, and even the movie house. A car is not just a convenience here, it is a necessity, part of a way of life.
This is where I have to shop, and I come here, and I don't see how I could get by using less gas. I go to work every day. I have to do that.
Back where we're at, buses don't even run. So I don't know. Maybe they could be a carpool.
Richard Roth, CBS News, St. Louis.
California runs on gas. There are 12 million cars and trucks here, and last year they burned up 10,310,600,000 gallons of gasoline, getting from here to there, or just idling in all the freeway traffic jams. Los Angeles is the supreme monument to the automobile. It's so strung out that it defies mass transit, so to get where you're going, you have to drive yourself. In California, you live on 4 wheels. Without ever once leaving your car, you can go grocery shopping, or get a hamburger,
Good morning, may I take your order?
or get your car washed, and even go to church on Sundays, for heaven's sake.
Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
Ask the lunch crowd down at Mel's Drive-In in San Francisco what a car means to a Californian.
I don't know what it's like to not have a car. I got out of high school, went into service, and ever since I've come out of service, I've always had an automobile.
You got to have it. You know, it's a necessity of life. There's not enough public transportation to get you around. A car is it.
Banish the Oakland A's to Albuquerque, demolish Disneyland, but cut off gasoline and you cut the life's blood out of California's whole lifestyle. Ration gas and you might as well declare California independent and let Sacramento deal direct with the Arabs. Richard Threlkeld, CBS News, San Francisco.
Use Scott's Liquid Gold countertop and stainless steel cleaner daily. One of the best features about the new Liquid Gold countertop and stainless steel cleaner is what it does with stainless steel. If you own stainless, then you already know about fingerprints and smudges. Watch this. Grease and prints disappear. leaving instead a clean, polished surface. Try the newest member of our family, Scott's Liquid Gold Countertop and Stainless Steel Cleaner.
In the future, the typewriter will have a ribbon in a cartridge, so students can snap in a ribbon in seconds. For professional-looking results, there'll be a special film cartridge. And for mistakes, there'll be a correction ribbon cartridge. The future is now. Introducing Smith Corona's new cartridge ribbon typewriters in electric portable and office models. See them now.
What's 5 feet 8 inches tall and weighs 145 pounds? Well, it's not Britain's Princess Anne. It is her wedding cake. The cake was unveiled today by the British Army, whose Royal Catering Corps baked it as a gift for the Princess and Captain Mark Phillips. The chef said the cake took 2 months to prepare. There was a rehearsal of the wedding procession today, and John Lawrence reports.
All the magnificence of next Wednesday's wedding was reduced to the dull, drab essentials of an early morning ride through the streets of Westminster by 300 soldiers and horses. This was the military rehearsal, and it was cold, damp, and dreary. The soldiers had to be out to practice their pacing before dawn to avoid tying up traffic. Left behind in the barracks were their black bearskin hats and bright red coats, to be kept clean for the wedding. In the empty grayness of a London morning, it was difficult to imagine how colorful it will all appear next week, when these now empty carriages carry the royal family to Westminster Abbey, escorted by the royalty of Europe, along streets lined by the Coldstream Guards and the Gurkha Rifles, and watched on television by an estimated 500 million people around the world. But this morning, leaving nothing to chance, wedding officials showed the soldiers how to get from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey and back again. John Lawrence, CBS News, London.
And that's the way it is. Friday, November 9th, 1973. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Good night.
See those young lovebirds back there? No, the other ones. They're recapturing some happy moments that happened 35 years ago on their honeymoon on a Greyhound bus. Well, things have changed a lot since then. New terminals, new buses, more room, more comfort, and a lot of other things you can't see. But you know, some things never change, and that's good.
The $1.50 a pound gassy stomach. The $10 no parking indigestion. The $1.29 heartburn.
The priceless stomach acid quencher. When you get acid indigestion, remember Rolaids consumes 47 times its weight in excess stomach acid. Take the excess stomach acid quencher, Rolaids, now also in spearmint.
From CBS News headquarters in New York, this has been the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. Acting Attorney General Robert H. Bork will be the guest this Sunday on Face the Nation. Tonight, your heart will be captured by the true life story of a woman's legacy of love to her husband and child. See Sunshine at 8:30, 7:30 Central on CBS.
A Metro policeman killed in the line of duty is laid to rest today. We'll have that story and other news next on Eyewitness News.
Auto owners, insurance, the all-together family.
As an independent agent, he has one boss, the hometown people he serves.
He'd use a company he could count on to look at the damage and take care of it without haggling or delays.
Our agencies are #1 in a lot of towns.
All together now.